Good morning, everyone. Today we have 6 experts in the world of exit planning. I'm joined by Josh Wee, Bob Braden, Stephanie Gum, Anne-Marie Mirza, and Lewis Rhodes. We're here to help CEOs, business owners, and executives think about the short term and the long term when it comes to preparing their business for the next stage. We've got a few panelists here to answer some questions, but we also had a few anonymous questions posted to us. So this is office hours. Feel free to pop in and ask any questions you like, and we'll be sure to get your questions answered. Why don't we go around the horn, starting with Bob? Please introduce yourself. Talk to us a little bit about why exit planning is something you're passionate about, and we'll get started.
Well, Ray, thank you. As Ray said, I'm Bob Braden. I am with Shine Management, and we provide fractional business support. The way we get involved with the exit planning is to help the owners and so forth realize that they can actually have folks assist them fractionally and not need somebody full-time. So the services we provide are the advisory management level at the high end. That's your C-suite executives. So your chief financial, chief executive, chief marketing officers, admin, operations. Because if somebody needs it for a couple of hours a week or just a couple of days a month, we can provide that support, and it can ebb and flow to help owners as they're thinking about their exit. We also have down in the weeds what we call our outsourced business services. And that's everything that nips at the heels of the business owners, right? It's the finance and accounting, reconciling your bank statements, collecting AR. We have an HR practice to help you with your onboarding process, you're developing your employee handbook, a full recruiting team, the full marketing team to support the chief marketing officer, right, and the things you do there. We offer sales support, IT support, legal guidance, admin support. So it's really what somebody needs to help them support their business. It could be short-term or long-term, or just a project base. You know, can you help us implement a CRM system, for instance, maybe HubSpot? So that's kind of what we do. Could be a government contractor. It could be a small business. It could be an association, a not-for-profit. It's really just to help business owners as they're growing or transitioning in one way or the other. Thank you, Ray.
Great. Thanks, Bob. Stephanie?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I am Stephanie Gum. I'm a certified exit planning advisor and financial planner with Horizon Advisory Group. And what I do is start with the end in mind to help you business owners work on their business, but it's integrating the personal financial plan into the business plan. So it's really understanding what that income number needs to be at age 95 in order to maintain your lifestyle and retirement and your legacy and work backwards. What does the value of the business need to be when you transition out and back up again? Where are you now? What do we need to do to help you get to that number if you're not there already? What are your value gaps, your profit gaps, your wealth gaps? What do we need to bring in? The business attorney? Do we need to bring in the estate planning attorney, private equity, IT to help you create some greater efficiencies and some fractional management as well? So I play the quarterback in making sure that we all stay on the same plane with your values, your ideals, your dreams, and that we're all moving in the right direction. And I basically founded this group so that we could discuss these challenges. A lot of times I'm going into cases where I don't necessarily know the CPA or the business attorney, and this is a great way to develop those stronger relationships where I can pull people in easily as needed. So I'm so glad everyone is here today. I'm glad to have you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Anne-Marie.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anne-Marie Mirza, and I specialize in estate planning, but particularly wills, trust, and then complex estate planning. And I counsel business owners when they're thinking about business succession planning and work in conjunction with the other experts that are here to make sure we have a plan that makes sense financially, but also legally to make the transition smooth. So you have a legacy from the nest egg that you built with your company to transition on to your next chapter, whether that's another business or whether you're ready to exit entirely. Our clients are mostly older business owners who are interested in maybe counseling or mentoring a younger business owner, and we want to transition their business from one person to another. But also our clients sometimes are thinking about their next business they're going to open, and they want to incorporate the buyout that they receive from their business into an estate plan as a legacy for their family members, and also for charitable contributions.
All right, great. Thanks, Anne-Marie. Josh.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Josh Weed. I'm a partner at Veterans Venture Capital, and we are an early growth stage investment fund. So we invest in veteran-owned or veteran-led businesses at the early stage. So think Series Seed or Series A. And we do more than just invest, but we invest with the exit in mind. As Stephanie said, we're thinking about how that company creates value over the time of our investment and then can monetize that at exit. And that is a deliberate process. It's not something you think about right at the end. It takes many years to prepare a business, help grow it, develop it, and prepare it for the exit. So I'm part of this group because we do invest with the exit in mind, and having collaborative partners for the exit is an important part of our investment strategy. And it's also some of the value that we create for the companies that we invest in. So great to be here and look forward to the discussion. Great.
Thanks, Josh. Lewis?
Hi. Hi, everyone. I won't take it personally. You called on me last, Ray. So I'm a general kind of specialist business attorney. I spent about 7 years as an in-house counsel, and in that process, I've gone through the M&A both on the buy and the sell side. So I lived it on the business side, as well as now in the private practice sector. The important part here, and a couple of my colleagues referred to, is you need to prep. You can't say I'm going to sell today and expect to sell at maximum value in 30 or 60 days. You need to be a year and a half, 2 year, ideally 2.5 years ahead of time with a plan. What I can help do is get your legal house in order to help maximize your value. If you've been through any M&A, due diligence is, if you're the seller, due diligence is your enemy, because the buyer is going to come in for due diligence and try to find any little gap that they can find to lower their buy price. So what I can help you do is to seal all those gaps, get all your contracts organized, get all of your employment issues correct, and make sure you're 100% legal and compliant. So when we get into the due diligence, A, the due diligence is easier, and B, we're not dealing with any issues trying to renegotiate the price because the buyer thinks they found a problem here or there.
All right. Thanks, Lewis. I'll make up for it by putting you on the spot. I'll wrap us up for intros, and then we'll dive right into some of the hot topics, and I'll keep it brief. I'm Ray Steen. I'm with Mainspring, a strategy and consulting firm. We work to help businesses be more efficient and more productive, and therefore more profitable. So when it comes to exit planning and preparing for the long term, as Lewis, you mentioned, having your house in order and making sure that your IT infrastructure, your staff are running optimally, and more importantly, risk. Most businesses present risk to buyers when they're considering either transitioning or succession planning, or they're selling their business, and that risk gets inherited from the buyer. So as you mentioned, as you're preparing for your exit, are you maximizing the tools and resources? Are you presenting the lowest risk option to your buyers? And what methodology are you doing? Are you using today? Or is it a combination of in-house and outsource? Is it entirely outsourced? Our company provides outsourced and fractional or co-managed IT support as far as strategy is concerned, and more importantly, is really just making sure that we're helping businesses know what they don't know around IT and prepare them for that long term. So, well, thank you everyone for your introductions. Let's jump right into some of the questions. Let's throw out there the elephant in the room. I'm not ready for exit planning or succession planning for 5 years. Why should I start now? Which is the most common question that we received. So I don't know who wants to tackle that one first.
I could do that, Ray.
Okay.
So, Lewis mentioned you got to start at least 2+ years out. I mean, frankly, I would like you to start when you start your business, because what you're doing is you're working on your business. You're staying focused. As a small business owners, you wear many hats, and it is so easy to get caught up in those day-to-day operations. What a plan is going to do, a transition plan, is help you know where you need to go, and then and have those conversations on exiting and what that's going to look like. And again, it's based on your values, your dreams, what you want to have happen, and what do we need to do in the business to get you there. So it takes time, and it takes a team, and it takes time, it takes knowledge. You don't know what you don't know. And once you get that plan in place, once you've worked with the professionals and the experts in the industry and design that plan, then it's working that plan and helping you stay focused on that plan on at least a monthly basis. So it's important to create those efficiencies to start in advance. And in addition to the fact, as Josh and Louis can attest, you may say you're ready, the market may not be ready for you. So it's really to maximize the efficiencies, make sure if you have a successor, the successor is going to be trained and ready, that everyone knows what's going to happen.
I'll segue off that too, because that's great points. But there's a couple other, and I agree. You begin with the end in mind. You set a goal. And you build your plan to achieve your goal. And if you don't know what your goal is, then you're not going to have a good plan. And we see a lot of clients, I'm sure we all have, where, they're successful, but they're going day to day, and, I can't take a vacation. I can't do this. I can't do that because, I'm making a lot of money. My business is great, but I'm shackled to it. But what Stephanie said at the end is, you may be ready, the market may not be. Well, I'll also give you the flip side. The market may be ready and you may not be. I work with a lot of government contractors, and you may win a big giant contract and you may be at peak value the day you ink that contract. And it may be the time for you to sell. And if you haven't been thinking about it and looking at it, you might not be in a position to sell. And let's, while we all want to, put COVID in our rear view mirror, let's talk about how the world can change any day. We all just went through COVID. We all went through the pandemic. It was a mess. There was a whole lot of businesses that had to change their plans. A lot of people changed their strategic plans and outlook. So there could be some event anywhere that makes you decide that, you know what, I'm kind of done with this and I want to sell. So planning to sell and getting yourself ready with a goal of 5 years puts you in place where you may be able to take advantage of a positive circumstance, or be able to sell it at maximum value in a negative circumstance. So, preparation is never a bad thing, and being ready to exit and having your ducks in order help you in all kinds of circumstances, not just guiding a path to get there in a few years.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I'll just say I'd like to, people got to think about being an opportunistic seller. Sometimes we meet people that that are business owners, that they really want to control the sale, and they sort of have a mind that I'm only going to sell in 5 years, and my value that I want is between 2 million and 2.5 million. And I always encourage people to remember that a buy-sell transaction is in fact a two-sided transaction. It's not a one-sided transaction. And so you have to be prepared, as Louis said, to take advantage of an opportunistic buyer, because you may not be able to control who it is that approaches you. You may have a company in mind that could be your strategic acquirer, but market conditions are going to vary that. And so you got to be open to a buyer that has the money and the strategic reason to acquire you to maximize your value. And you don't generally control the timing of that. So preparation is key, as both Louis and Stephanie said.
And just following up on that point, I often equate estate planning to having like a catcher's mitt. So whenever you have you're going to exit, you should have the exit planned ahead of time, like a catcher's mitt, to catch the asset, whatever that might be, in the most economical way possible. And also that satisfies your values, thinking about a case of emergency, if incapacity, if something happens to you, but also to have some way to manage those funds whenever you receive the buyout. But secondly, sometimes it's good to have a middle ground versus, so you're running your business every day, you're all in, and then, you don't often take a full step back because you have the entrepreneurial spirit, it's not necessarily all or nothing. So sometimes it's good to, have a middle ground. And then, I think maybe Bob can speak to this, that, he can step in and provide some management so you can slowly back away and slowly get used to someone else stepping in, and preparing your transition.
Yeah, Anne-Marie, you're right. And one of the things that I do when I talk to business owners, I ask them, I say, so why did you start your company? Oh, Bob, let me tell you something. I was so excited. I thought about this. It's a service, it's a product, or whatever it is, and the value that it brings to the market and what it's able to do and what I've been able to do for this. And the excitement is there. You see it. And then I ask them, I say, what keeps you from doing that? And you literally see the air go out of the balloon, right? It's everything that keeps me from doing it. It's the finance and accounting. I spent Friday 10 hours trying to reconcile my bank statements, and I'm still $32.18 off. Little things like that. I can't find the right people to hire. My marketing is so out of date. My website says my next event's April of 2019. It's little things like that, because as business owners start their business, they're thinking about what? Starting their business. They get to this point because everything is going very, very well. But now they're in that riptide. They're trying to work on their business, but they really can't because they're too tied, as Lewis said, shackled to their business. They don't get the vacations. They don't get the opportunity to really take advantage of what they have built. So being able to help with some fractional support or other types of things in planning is what we offer.
Yeah, and I'm sure we can all agree, when you're in the thick of the business and you don't even have a plan or at least a partial vision long term, it's hard to start making progress on the long term. You're constantly working on the short term. So Bob, you and I work in a business where we start to offload some of those responsibilities, right? You do a lot of outsourced and fractional business support. We provide IT strategy and support, outsource. Those are both solutions that start getting put in place and planning after you've met with your financial advisor, you've talked to an M&A attorney, you've talked around long-term investments and strategy and how you plan to fund your potential plan, at least. And then you start working with your attorney to figure out how exactly you're going to get there, just to understand the big picture. So, we talk about how many years out before you start, let's say, going to market, taking your business to it. How many years further out do you need to start implementing some of those changes, right? In most cases, most businesses are going out to market and they're not being sold because they've got a great in-house administration team, right? For example, maybe they've got a few key cogs, but then they've got, staff underneath them and things aren't well tuned. So where you start understanding what the business value is what is it that they're providing to their stakeholders, and then what pieces can be optimized through fractional support to get to that end number. All right, we've got another question. One of them is on the legal side. What are some legal tools used for business succession planning?
I think I'll take
The
that.
lawyer gets the, we'll let the estate planner go first.
Thank you.
Ladies first.
Well, I appreciate that. I'll leave some out for you, Lewis. So the first piece, honestly, is to look at the corporate structure, and Lewis, I think, was going to speak to that. But another tool to use is a business power of attorney. So that's one thing to keep in mind when you're going to consider selling your company, because in between you putting your company out there that you're ready to have it purchased, you want to make sure the sale still goes through and someone has power to execute the deal. So a business power of attorney is something that you absolutely should consider getting, now right away. in between the a potential sale, in between your potential exit. And it can also serve in case of emergency, in case you're incapacitated. So someone in the company has the power to, hit the button and have payroll go through, or have the power to execute any type of employee benefits agreements, just to make sure things are running.
So
So
Emery, can I interrupt you real quick? So from a power of attorney standpoint, if it's a private business, it's LLC, it's under the owner's name, there are ways to split off that power of attorney from your personal power of attorney to the business.
absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
It's a separate piece. Sometimes it gets a little bit more muddled if you have maybe a husband-wife team or a father-son team. And so, they want to have it together instead of separate. But I do recommend that you have it separate, because often we attach a schedule to that, or some type of exhibit that has, all of the passwords, the access codes, the representatives, who you talk to for workers' compensation in case there's a potential claim. So the power of attorney is sort of almost like a living document. Everyone's probably heard of a living revocable trust, but a power of attorney can be a living document, constantly updated, with the information, so things could happen in case of emergency. And then when a potential buyer comes in and looks to see how organized that you already are, you're not only organized with your management, and you're not only organized with risk and IT and all of that, you're not only organized on the business side, but you actually have a plan in case of emergency. People are very impressed by that.
Great. So outside of legal, why is it important for small business owners to consider estate planning?
Oh, wait, but actually, before we go into that, Louis, do you want to jump in on like the other legal tools? So the buy-sell agreement, the operational agreement.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I think Darren, we saw you pop in here, and while we're chatting away, if you have any questions specifically, as a guest, feel free to interrupt us at any point in time and ask your question. We're all a group of people that love to talk, so we'll keep going. You're free to listen, but feel free to interrupt and ask. And Anne-Marie, I appreciate that. The power of attorney is obviously key for all the reasons Anne-Marie said, because forget about sales and everything else, the emergency situation. If you end up in a hospital and you're the only guy who can sign contracts for your company, that's a problem. But there's also much more limited scopes and focuses you can give to employees all the way throughout, and a lot of small business owners don't want to hand the keys to the kingdom to anyone, and it's trust has got to be earned. You can give signature of authority to employees through a document that allows them to sign up to a certain level, like, hey, you can sign contracts or make purchases up to $5,000, and then after a time I can expand it. Or you can if you document and assign, that's how you can also groom and develop your workforce, and they can prove that they trust you, and you can do that throughout. Obviously your corporate documents need to be in order. You need to have a good operating agreement. I'm gonna sound like I'm selling my services here, but like anything else, you get what you pay for. And if you go pull an operating agreement off of LegalZoom, it's not what you want to go into a transaction with. Spend the money to have an attorney write you a good operating agreement. There's contingencies out there that a good attorney has seen 55 times and you'll never even think of. If you have multiple owners of a company, you dang straight need to get yourself to an attorney and write through an operating agreement well and clear. And especially if you have multiple owners and you want to talk about it from an exit strategy, what if only one wants to get out? You need an operating agreement that talks about how you do that. And you want to protect yourself to make sure that if my partner does sell, I get to control who he's selling to, because I want to make sure I know who I'm in business with. And then again, if you're in a government setting and government contractor and you're in a socioeconomic group, there's a whole nother level of regulations that have to go on to how these documents are written. And these things all, as you get, these are day-to-day operational functions, but they snowball as you get into an exit an exit position. And this again is putting all your house in order, because the whole goal of putting your house in order is to maximize your sell price. And the more problems you have, the lower your sell price gets. So this is really an investment in cashing in on the backside.
So to build off of that, when it comes to due diligence, Lewis, you said that that's somewhat of the enemy of the sell. What areas seem to pop up the most?
Well, a lot of stuff is a lot of your employment stuff, your ERISA, your 401ks, and all that other compliance with a big capital C on the employment stuff. Contracts that aren't well organized, that aren't your mods aren't all, you get a modification to a contract from the government, or you give a mod to another company, and your contract files are a mess. You can't see things clean, because as someone's going through due diligence, if they go into your contract files and your contract files are disorganized, they're going to think your whole company is disorganized, and it's going to, that's going to create a problem. And frankly, if your files are disorganized and your contracts are disorganized, you're not going to know what you have in there. So one of the hardest things to do is, as you're busy and moving 100 miles an hour, is keeping your house in order. A lot of times I see a lot of small business owners that are like that. If you remember Ray, you have young kids, so I'm sure you've read Cat in the Hat a million times. The scene where the cat's on the unicycle with like 2 sticks in his hand, balancing a ball on his head and stuff on the sticks. When you're a small business owner, that's what you're doing a lot of times. And and I'll put a plug in for Ray and Bob, and these fractional support is it can't be more important. Because a lot of business owners think, oh, I can't afford to hire a CFO. Well, you don't need to hire a CFO. You go to Bob and you hire a CFO for 5 hours a week, just to take one of the balls off your head, or I'm worried about IT, and how the hell, what does CMMC mean, and what's the current roles? Well, you call a guy like Ray, and you can get everything in order. And instead of adding another big rock in your pack, you're bringing somebody on at a very affordable cost that more than pays out in the long run.
Josh, you come from a little bit of a different perspective, from the venture capital perspective. What are venture capital investors looking at when it comes to investigating a business for purchase?
Yeah, so I mean, venture capitalists is different than a lot of business and small business owners, in the sense that it's really not about a lifestyle business. I mean, a lot of small businesses are lifestyle business, and they can have tremendous growth, but it's really about sort of that ownership or small partnership group, having sort of an income, and then also creating value for their life and family. One of the main differences in more of an investment style, or whether it's private equity or venture capital, is it's really about growth and really fast growth. And so a lot of people think about venture capital as just, sort of a tech company or a software platform from Silicon Valley, but that's not what most investments are. We invest in predominantly hardware type companies, and predominantly hardware companies that are in the national security and defense area. But they still need to have growth, significant double-digit growth year over year, which creates value for both the founding team as well as any type of private investment that comes in. And so, related to the conversation we were just having, anytime a company grows quickly, which is what we expect, things break, right? Or sort of they sort of outkick their coverage, whether that's for back office, how do you structure a sales team? How do you write HR policies on the fly, develop, grow an IT infrastructure, build out financial systems? All those things require rapid expansion. And that's difficult to do. And typically that's not organically done. So another sort of plug for getting technical and expert support where you need it. As you scale a business very rapidly, you need to bring in experts. And it reminds me of sort of the book, The Who, Not How. A lot of times founders think that they need to do it themselves and learn and become the expert on it. And that takes a tremendous amount of time. And so as we're advising our companies, we always ask them the who, not how. Who do you know in your network, or who do we know in our network that we can reach out to and get the right answer to this question, rather than spend hours or days, months, sort of trying to figure this out ourselves and build the capability within the company.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, that's really important. And I think, to emphasize, business owners need to have a process that's sellable, that's separate from themselves. But Ray, I have a question for you actually. How does IT play a role in valuation, in business valuation?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the plain answer is when you dive into a P&L for any business, you can just start rummaging through COGS and understand, where's the money being spent and is it being spent wisely? I can't tell you, you all know this, we're all in technology, right? No matter what kind of business you're in, whether you're an association or a nonprofit and you're serving members, or you're a for-profit business, government consulting firm, and your stakeholders are the primes or federal government, every single part of your division runs on technology. And there's a lot of decisions and money being spent in areas without necessarily a longer term vision of how that fits, right? So most businesses empower their departments to purchase technologies, they empower them to make software decisions. And what we find is there's a lot of overlap, right? There's a lot of crawl and waste and money falling out of the bottom when it comes to an organization because it is so easy. And because we do trust our folks to be somewhat technology savvy, and we trust that they're looking at their industry through their own lens, right? Who's to say if you're running an association and your department is around, growing your membership, that you don't know, membership solutions that are out there. But there are lots of pieces that come into play when it comes to technology, not just infrastructure. There's business lines of business applications that become a key cost escalator, and who's evaluating those solutions across their industry and determining how long-term and how sticky those solutions become. Because as business owners go to evaluate another business or another organization, they have to decide, am I buying whatever I'm buying now? How long are those costs going to, convey? So a lot of solutions, technology specific and hardware, are purchased with in mind that it's going to be around for 5 to 10 years with some add-ons. And so we've all been down the route, and we've seen where buying the wrong thing or investing in the wrong thing can have, a multiple effect, right? It takes about 1.5 years to realize you've gone the wrong direction, and then another 1.5 years to go the right direction. And then even then, what processes are in place, and what partnerships are in place to continue to evaluate that. So just from the base level of what are you spending your money on, how much is being wasted, what can be reduced or avoided, that's kind of having a team and a process and methodology to understand how to keep those costs controlled, right? We know that salaries are going to continue to escalate, based off of a typical trajectory, unless it can be outsourced or fractionally provided. But the hardware and the software become, a similar glide path if it's not watched carefully.
And to chime in there, and having seen this on an M&A front and give more support to the outsource model, it's a couple things. You may invest a lot of money in an IT system today that you're not necessarily keeping on top of changes, new technologies, best in class things. Where you hire an outsourced professional, they're going to be able to keep you at the cutting edge in this technology side. Well, another benefit of outsourcing things like your IT stuff, we're talking about exiting, we're talking about M&A. Somebody's going to come in and inquire you. They're going to have an IT infrastructure of their own. And they're not necessarily going to want to take over yours. And it's a lot smoother and a lot easier to go through the transition process. And there's going to be a lot less hiccups if you're dealing with an outsourced IT provider instead of having your own in-house IT solutions and technologies and hardware and everything else. So just some of my smarter, younger clients, those of us who saw the 1970s and remember them, we're not as flexible and nimble, but a lot of my younger clients are crushing it on their day-to-day operations by outsourcing stuff. I met with a client last night. She's a government contract services provider. She's pulling in 15 to 18% margin on her contracts, which is about double the average because she outsources everything. She has like 3 back office non-billable employees. Everybody else is billable. So she's using guys like Ray and Bob, and she's making more money now, and she's setting herself up for a bigger payday when she decides to sell in a couple years, because of making smart choices with outsourcing. And they said, I'll keep being your advocate here, you guys, because as I see it with my clients, my smart clients are all outsourcing everything. It takes, and from a legal perspective, here's the other thing I'm going to tell you. If you hire Ray to manage your IT stuff, he's now bearing all the risk if you have any kind of cyber incident. You're not. And your cyber insurance policy goes down, your cost of insurance go down, your risk and your mitigation costs all drop because you're paying someone to take all that risk on for you. So don't undersell the the risk transfer that goes with outsourcing some of this stuff.
Good point.
You're right, Lewis. One of the things you actually mentioned earlier about the ball on the top of your head, right? Business owners do that. They juggle balls all day long. And the challenge is when one of the balls drops, make sure it's the one that bounces back. Because if it's one of those ones that break, now what do you have? Now you have to fix it. So if you bring folks in to help from an outsourced perspective that can take some of those things off of your plate. I know it's difficult. We all want to hold on to everything, right? No, I don't want to give that away. I want to make sure that's managed the right way. Think about AR. It's easy to have someone else collect your AR. It's one of those things you say to yourself, well, it's going to be coming in, it's okay. But if we don't collect it and it doesn't come in, we don't have the dollars to do what we need to do to run the business. There's a lot of activity that can be done behind the scenes, literally in the back office, to help support and run the business while you're out there on, working on the business. Challenge yourself to say, what could I allow someone else to do? Start small. The little things first, right? And then allow someone else to help you. But that's what we're all here for, is to try and help the business owners understand that, so they can look to that future. What's my exit strategy? What's the plan that's going to get me from day one when I start my business to where I can actually leave the business and sell it at, where I wanted to sell it from a valuation standpoint.
And I think all of our ideas are amazing, and best practice, all speaking to best practices. But one thing is that kind of, I find, prevents people from just even starting any type of estate planning, wills or trusts, and possibly preparing for an exit, is that they think it has to be perfect. They think it has to be like go in 100%. You have to go all in, hire this person, and all in and hire that person. But 80% to start is really a good target versus having everything be, an ideal scenario, because sometimes that can be overwhelming. So as much as we're speaking to, doing things the ideal way, keep in mind, having any kind of plan, a plan is better than no plan.
Yeah, no, that's a great lead in. I mean, we're talking about a lot of different things when it comes to the varieties of exit planning and succession planning options. Stephanie, you mentioned you often find yourself in the quarterback position because you're talking to business owners as the planner. I'm gonna put everybody on the spot. Is that typically where things should start, with an individual business owner and their financial advisor understanding where they want to be financially, and then starting to build the team and the experts around not only the advice, long-term and short-term, but then the implementation? I'm seeing some head nods. I assume that means yes, we all believe financial advisory is the place to start. Okay. So I'm going to open it up to exit planning options. Very broad question, right? What are my options? I can hand it down to somebody in my family. I can sell it out in the open market. I can get some private equity investors. What are all the options?
So I can jump in on that. Yeah, basically there are 6 different options that people can start. And this is where people also get stuck, because they don't know what their options are, and they don't know who to go to have that discussion. So that's where, a certified exit planning advisor can help your financial advisor, rather than having all these separate conversations. But obviously one is private equity to build and grow the company very quickly. And you need to go, the business owners need to go through because there are pros and cons in each area. So we look at private equity. If you're a good sized company, you've got at least 20 employees, and ESOP may be an option. Employee stock option plan, where you're slowly selling shares to the employees who are vested in the company. Some business owners will gift it to a family member if they don't need the income for their retirement or for their legacy, what they want to have happen. The fourth is selling to an outside buyer. I mean, that's where Lewis comes in with the M&A, mergers and acquisitions. And that takes, again, there are pros and cons to each, and that takes time and diligence and planning. And then the inside buyout, which can be tricky, especially if it's a family member, and making sure that those people or that individual is trained to take over, and that all key employees and the team knows what's going to happen when you transition out with that successor. A lot of times the successor, I'll come into a company, the successor doesn't know they're the future successor. So it's really planning and training and preparing is critical. And I'll tell you, the most common 49% of companies, this is the last option, is liquidate. Because they did not necessarily plan properly. If the assets outweigh the total value of the company, that's an unforced way out of the company. But unfortunately, there are also a lot of liquidations happen because, again, the plan wasn't in place.
I think one aspect of that plan to talk about is, when you're thinking about the exit and who that acquirer is, that owner needs to figure out if that exit is purely a monetizing event for them and they want to step 100% away from the business, or are they, do they want to stay in the business and just want to take some of their chips off the table, or are they open to what the buyer wants? And that is certainly the most flexible option, will maximize their value. And maximize the number of buyers that are in the marketplace, because most strategic acquirers, private equity style buyers, et cetera, will want some type of continuity transition. They're not going to do a hard left turn on some of these businesses. And then they're going to want that owner to keep some of their chips in the game through sort of a buyout option or some clawback provisions to make sure that the transaction pays them for what they want. So I think that's an important question that I've found a lot of owners don't really think through about, sort of what are they willing to do post-closing as they're thinking about that timeline. It's a lot better to have sort of a rundown scenario as opposed to here's the date I need to be out and let's make sure we sell it by that date. If you do that, you will leave money on the table for sure.
Good points, Josh and Stephanie. Well, a couple things I wanted to segue off of Stephanie's is I've seen more friendships and family relationships destroyed over business associations than probably any other relationships. Now, I don't do family law, so maybe that's why. But just because you are selling a business to your brother or transferring it to your kids or someone, your cousin or someone else in your family, you still need to do the proper legal paperwork and documentation. Because everybody comes in with their own perspective, and Ray and I can sit down and have a conversation and debate, and discuss how we're going to do something, and we can both walk away with our own perspective, and they may not be the same. Putting it down on paper where you read the words so everyone knows exactly what's going to happen is vitally important. I've seen, I honestly just went through a really, really ugly arbitration between two guys who were best friends who started a business 10 years ago and now hate each other's guts. So it was kind of sad to see their friendship destroyed, and some emotions came out in the testimony, but because they didn't have the right kind of documentation, even at the start, it just built and went more and more divergent. So again, if you're going to do an internal takeover, it could be, the best employee you've had who's worked for you for 20 years. I'm dealing with another issue with that, where a guy sold it inside to two other people and they're struggling and they're not paying him on his note. Not saying the transaction itself was bad, But if you don't have a good transaction and you don't paper things over correctly, even if you're selling it to someone you have a close relationship with, you still need to get it done correctly, because these things go sideways. And what I always tell people is putting in all the hard work up front, having all the uncomfortable discussions initially, and putting it down on paper means you'll survive if anything goes sideways. If you don't have those up front and things go sideways, you could be destroying a friendship, as well as costing yourselves a whole lot of money.
So that's a great transition, Lewis. We've been addressing the business owner and some of the resources and best practices they should be aware of and preparing for in the situation where there are key players, where there is somebody that's identified that's maybe already within the business that you want to work on with the transaction. For those individuals, who do they need to get together with? Is it all the same players and they just need somebody there to help represent them from a financial planning, legal, inside buyer advice, and somebody that also has control over, part of the operations of the business, so they can start making headway on reducing costs and getting things in order? Is it all the same?
From a legal standpoint, right? The seller is going to maximize value by keeping its key employees and getting them to agree to an employment contract, not an employment agreement. Employment agreements are generally at will. You can walk away at any point in time. They're going to want contracts, and I'm going to want a commitment that you're going to stay a certain amount of time. Now the seller's going to have to pay, and right, if you're, to do that. Now, if you're the key employee, it's great if you're the guy who like, hey, I'm selling my company and the buyer wants you to commit to staying for 12 years. You probably should go talk to an employment attorney who does those kind of things to make sure you're being treated fairly. All right, let's talk about, let's go to a baseball scenario with Juan Soto, right? The Nationals are on the market. Everybody knows it. They tried to lock Soto up for 10 years. And he's like, I'm not signing a contract because I don't know who my new boss is going to be. All right. So if you're that key employee, yeah, you're going to want a lawyer investing in your interests to make sure you're being treated fairly in the process. Now, it can't be the lawyer representing the seller because there's a conflict. I want you to sign an agreement because I want to get my client maximum dollars, but I'm not protecting your interests. I'm protecting my clients. So, if you're that key employee and someone comes to you as a sale, and frankly, if you're the seller and you like your employee and you want to treat them fairly, you should advise them, hey, it's probably worth your time to go get a lawyer, pay him for a few hours of work to make sure you're getting a good deal and you're comfortable with what I'm leaving you with.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful. Stephanie, did you have something to add?
No, I just actually had a new topic in the way of that we haven't really talked about is unforced forced transitions. If you don't have a proper buy-sell or disability agreement in place, it can truly be disastrous for a company. Recently I had two partners who owned a grocery store, and age 49, 51, the 49-year-old got cancer. I mean, nobody expects to get cancer. And he went through treatments. They didn't have a buy-sell agreement in place. It was too late to do anything at that point. He was fine. And 2 years later, he got it again. And it was not great. And in the meantime, his other partner didn't know what to do because he didn't want to hire somebody to try and replace him, with the idea that he was coming back and hoping he was coming back, and didn't want him to think otherwise. It was just a really tough situation. And those situations happen more often than we think. 1 in 4 20-year-olds will become disabled during their working years. So it's protecting yourself with those forced transitions is really important.
So if you have a plan and you're working under the best case, controllable situation, and you're working with everybody here to make sure that plan stays on course, is there? I would think that the equivalent to what I'm looking for is a disaster recovery plan, right? Most businesses don't want to put one together. They don't want to think about disasters.
Right.
But if you have a playbook and something happens, like, I don't know, a pandemic, and everybody suddenly needs to work somewhere else and you've lost half your revenue, or these different situations, you have a playbook to go to and you can minimize your downtime and you can minimize the cost to your business. For a plan that's, say, 5-10 years out, depending on who you're working with, is there usually a unforced or uncontrollable, plan in place in case there is, let's say, an individual that passes away or gets sick, and what's that called, and is that usually built into most plans?
It, absolutely. And that's part of the financial planning analysis, because you've got to have that protection in place before something happens. Anne-Marie, you could also talk to that a bit if you'd like.
Yeah, so there's legal business contingency planning. And, a lot of times we were talking about, having all those, balls spinning and, you're running your business, but you've built up so much goodwill, with your clients, with the contracts that you've gotten, you have commitments, things like that. And sometimes it's difficult to take that step back and do the planning. And, I can bop it over to Bob to say, if you were running the business so much that you can't do your legal business contingency planning, everything that you built up, all of that goodwill, your reputation, not to mention, the assets can be down, gone in a second. I had a client recently who had a very successful high-end medical professional practice. And suddenly he actually, and his wife was part of the business as well, kind of back office. And suddenly, he came out with a condition, and they had to decide to sell. And I had another situation where it was a similar small business. It was a husband who was running the business, and he got COVID, and unfortunately he had to sell immediately. And if they had done some type of planning ahead of time, any type of legal business contingency planning, they could have taken their time, they could have structured things a little bit better, and they would have gotten a more assets for the business that they built up in the first place. But overall, it's called legal business contingency planning, and it's actually worth its weight in gold to do that planning, to take a step back, to outsource a little bit, just to, even if you have to do it, create your own, business retreat, to step back for 3 days. It actually doesn't take that long. All you have to do is go through your regular operations and decide what needs to keep running if you can't run it yourself.
Those are that's great. And there's A+ and then there's C+ to get you along the same lines. And anything where you're empowering your employees to act on behalf of the business is giving you some protection if you need to step away. So even starting those signature authority things, and it's great that we segued into this topic, because this Darren asked a great question in the Q&A. He's the face of his business, and how do you start to transition out of the face of this business? And I'm gonna fall out of my legal hat a little bit and talk back and rely on things I learned in a very long Marine Corps career. Is you need to start developing your people. I was an infantry officer in the Marine Corps, and they taught me when I was 23 years old that I got to be prepared to be shot in the head and have the next guy step up. It's an extreme example, but you learn, in that environment, that you got to develop a number two. So as much as and I've worked for a couple of companies where the president and CEO was a force of personality who kind of drove the train. Some of them were better than others at developing their people, but start taking, get a good trusted employee and start bringing them with you to meetings, start introducing them to your clients, start putting them out there as someone that your client that you trust. And then you're telling your client that, hey, you can trust this guy. I trust Bob. I'm going to put Bob out front because, I know Bob's a rock star, and call him at any point in time. And a lot of this, a lot of this is more leadership than legal. But it ties together, and a lot of this succession planning and a lot of the success of how do I get my business to run and how can I sell my business? You need to have a workforce that's empowered and developed. And if you empower and develop them, they will make your life easier today and tomorrow, and they'll make your company more valuable to sell. I do this with young attorneys. I bring my, a young associate into a client meeting and introduce them and just make your clients comfortable with dealing with people beyond you. If you're the only person they ever deal with, then yes, that you have a hard time selling your company. If your clients have dealt with 3 other people at your company and they've gotten top-notch service and they know that they have a list of 5 people they can call and get what they need, that makes it a lot easier to start transitioning work to those other folks. And Darren, let us know if that doesn't kind of answer your question.
I think that was a great way of putting it, Lewis. I tell people, like the people that you're working with, love the process, fall in love with the process, right? Obviously, for small businesses that are selling B2C, particularly our professional services, your first entry point is selling yourself and earning that trust. But at the end of the day, you're a business owner and you're trying to scale, and you need to continue to think in the minds of how can I continue this process where I'm not in control of every single part of service delivery, and that's done through process. So I mean, talking to prospects and our clients as well, I love that they love the people that are supporting them from a technology and strategy standpoint, but do they understand the process as delivering the results? That's really what they should be purchasing. And in the situation of B2C, what is it that they're buying? They're not really buying you. They're buying the result of something that's well built, that's going to stay well built. They got a good value out of it, and good advice. And so I think your advice is spot on, Lewis. Investing in your people, and continuing to focus on the processes that deliver the results that you're selling. Great question.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a few minutes left till office hours are closed. Anybody have any topics they wanted to bring up? We've done a great job running through a number of questions and segueing off of each other. Any closing remarks?
Never give a lawyer a microphone, but I'll let Bob go because I've been monopolizing the conversation. I was going to give you a lead in anyway, Bob.
Well, what we've talked about here is, thinking about your business. You started your business. So obviously you started something that's already successful. So you're thinking about your exit plan. Think about those things that you can offload to other people. Allow someone else to do it, whether they're within your business or someone you outsource to. It really depends upon what the best solution is for your company. But as a part of having the discussions with your planning, whether it's for the planning to run my business or the plan to exit my business, all of that comes together, and you can't do it once. Stephanie said, you meet on a regular basis. You have to continue to update these things. Yes, you can look out for the next 3 months. Yes, you can look out for a year in front of you, 2 years, 5 years. You have to continually do that and update that to make sure you can be successful and have the support you need, and you don't get drugged down and go back to what Lewis said, shackled to your business. Figure out that model that supports you and what you want to do to be successful.
Really good points, Bob. I appreciate that. Absolutely.
Well, that's what I was going to stress too, is exit planning is important, but you start exit planning when you build your efficiencies in your day-to-day operations. You start developing employees and outsourcing some responsibilities, and you start making the company sustainable without your attention. That's the first step in your exit planning. There's a lot more that goes into exit planning, but a lot of this stuff, when you start thinking, everyone's like, oh, I don't want to sell, I'm not this. Well, a lot of this stuff that goes into exit planning is making your life easier on a day-to-day basis, and if you're doing it right, is going to make you more money on a day-to-day basis. So when you build to maximize your value at the end of the day, and maybe you're not planning on selling for 10 years, but that's great, and God bless you. I hope it works out that way. But when you properly plan to exit, you're putting more money in your pocket on a monthly basis, if in my experiences. So I said, this isn't just a end of the road strategy. This is a month-to-month strategy that can help maximize your short-term profits as well as your long-term gain.
Makes sense. Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining for our first Experts office hours. We'll get that one down. We're going to try to get the next date out there for everybody. We'll also send a recording of this out along with everyone's contact information. That way you can reach out if you've got follow-on questions or to find out where you can get additional support. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great start to your week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.